So you want to buy a Quad City Challenger 2. Depending on where you live, these could be classified as an ultralight, a microlight, a light sport aircraft, or maybe something else. The key word though is light. Just approximately 320 pounds empty, which is equal to exactly one Shaquille O'Neal. That's about average for a 7-foot tall NBA superstar, but very light for an airplane. Challenger 2 is a two-seater, sort of, and is as commonly found on floats and skis as it is on wheels. Performance varies a fair bit depending on what you have going on. Flying solo without floats is pretty darn efficient. Sticking someone in the back seat will cost you an extra gallon of fuel per hour, so will floats, but floats will also rob you of about 15% of your cruise speed. No matter what you do, you'll get 500 pounds of useful load, which is really good for a plane this size. You should note that these performance numbers are for the Rotax 503 engine, which is no longer produced, but most Challenger 2s are still equipped with them. The Rotax 582 replaced it and has 65 horsepower, about 15 more than the 503. Anyway, I said this is sort of a two-seater. Let's talk about that. Weight isn't the problem, it's space. Solo flying is fine. The front seat is pretty comfortable once you get in. The rear seat is not so much. It's only a few inches behind the front seat, and that's because your feet don't go down there. Even if they could fit, you couldn't put them down there because there's no real floor. If you look down, it's just the fabric from the bottom of the plane. The rear seat passengers' feet go on the rear rudder pedals, which are by the pilot's knees. There's no room to go wide, so you're really in there. It can get a little romantic. I suppose if you were well acquainted with your pilot, it might be kinda nice. I was not. My first and only rear seat Challenger 2 flight was not unlike getting a somewhat bumpy piggyback from a stranger for about 45 minutes. Anyways, enough about the back. The front seat is just fine, and most people fly solo. Extra fuel is the most common rear seat occupant. Here's where the Challenger starts to get really interesting. These are inexpensive airplanes. Building a new model will cost $50,000 or so, but an older Challenger 2 can cost as little as $10,000. And the affordability doesn't stop there. Individual expenses for ultralights are slim. Hangar is tough to get around. If you have a place to store your Challenger without paying rent, you can probably cut your annual expenses in half. The Rotax 503 TBO is just 300 hours and costs about $2,500 to overhaul, although it's not uncommon to see these go to 500 hours or more. Depending on where you live and how you're registered, annual inspections may not even be required. You will spend some dollars on maintenance each year, but it likely won't be the government telling you to do it. Still not a bad idea. If you've never flown in something this light, you should know it's not really the same as flying in small Cessnas and Pipers. You really are at the mercy of the wind. Leaning forward to tie your shoe is enough to pitch the nose down. When used as intended, ultralight flying can be extremely enjoyable and affordable experience. That is, sticking to calm conditions with no urgency, and trying to get more out of them than was ever really intended will probably lead to disappointment. That's the Quad City Challenger 2. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next.